So welcome to the 8 Wastes. My name is Paul Dean. I'm a continuous improvement practitioner with over 25 years experience. You know what? This is a big topic for Lean. In fact, it's at the fundamental core of Lean. The main objective for Lean is to maximize value for the customer whilst eliminating waste. In this way, we focus on the customer and make our internal steps and processes more streamlined, smoother, more responsive, more agile, which will create shorter lead times and improve our position with the customer. Waste and value have this very close relationship, which we'll explore in this presentation. So let's just very quickly talk about value. So what is value? Value is what the customer is paying for. They pay for value, but unfortunately we charge them for waste. Value adding is when we take a raw material and then take some work to it to make it better, making it suit the customer's requirements. For example, in this harvested coffee bean supply chain example, the harvested coffee beans end up as a cup of coffee. But along the process chain, there are a series of supplier-customer connections. Value has been added to it, but not all the steps are valuable to the customer. We sometimes think of value as the work and cost we put into a process step, but it's important to see the value in the eyes of the customer. It's the value from their perspective that's important. This applies to both internal and external customer. Remember, the customer is only interested in what they perceive as value. But to start us on the journey, value is defined in Lean by categorizing each step in a process within one of three groups: non-value add, business value add, and value add. So for example, let's take this model of a typical process having 10 steps. It can be any process within our organization. Now, within these 10 steps, there are always three types of process value. The first one is non-value add. This is a step that doesn't add any value or importance to the customer or the supplier, and thus is wasteful. Now, we can easily identify these steps as they're normally quite obvious and frustrating. Most organizations try and focus on eliminating these steps because they often cause pain. The next category is business value add. This is a step that adds some little importance to the customer, but is very important to the supplier. This can look like a compliance step, such as safety or HR. And one good litmus test is asking ourselves, would the customer care if this step was effective? Now, they might care if we didn't do it at all, but they might be concerned if it wasn't efficient. So we don't want to eliminate it, but we need to make it more efficient. And then the final category is the most important, called value add. This is a step that is very important to the customer and very important to the supplier. In fact, it's so important that we need to ensure that it's done correctly. Now, for example, quality checks, invoicing, dispatching, etc. Now let's take a look at our 10-step model now that we've applied our lean thinking. Remember, there are three categories of process value: non-value add, business value add, and the all-important value add. The aim of Lean is to allow the proportion of value add to increase by eliminating the non-value add and reducing the business value add. Now this results in a shorter lead time, smoother process flow, and possibly, because we've removed wasteful activities, a safer, better quality and service outcome. And value is affected by waste. So let's start to look at waste in terms of lean thinking. Now, waste is any step or action that doesn't add any value to the customer. And as I said before, the customer only wants to pay for value. They're not interested in our waste, but unfortunately we charge them for it. So how does this happen? Let's just quickly look at our profit and loss statement. All of the costs of running our business is translated into price of the product or service we provide. So if some of our internal processes or steps are wasteful, they are still factored into the overall price of to our customer. Sometimes it's easy to see waste as the amount of material or scrap that we throw into the bin, but we'll soon see that waste can be sometimes hidden, but it's still called waste. The other factor is sometimes we have to drop our price to be more competitive. This only affects our profit. Therefore, if we have waste in our processes, we're likely to be less competitive or even make lower profits. And additionally, when we have wasteful steps in our processes, it can lead to further waste. and not to mention the frustration it causes to the people undertaking those steps. Frustrated workers are never efficient workers, affecting morale and hence draining productivity. Now, is this compelling enough to try and eliminate waste? Because millions of organisations around the world believe so. Hence, waste elimination is one of the most popular components of Lean. By applying Lean, we can be more competitive. Lean aims at reducing waste so we can be more profitable. There are primary reasons why waste is eliminated, and what are they? This is a list that I've collected over the years of tackling this subject. 1. It's difficult to identify waste since we've been doing the same thing for years. Secondly, we don't have the time or resources to do something about it. Third, we don't have the understanding to eliminate the waste that maybe we've identified. And 4, we just don't know where to start. So let's take a look at waste one by one. And they come into the terms of the 8 wastes. The first one is T, transportation. This is moving items from one place to another. And this is typically across the process step to the next and doesn't add any value to the customer. In an office environment, workers who collaborate should be close together because sending information across an office could lead to mistakes happening. And in a factory, materials necessary for production should be easily accessible where they're being used. Otherwise, delays occur and time is wasted double or even triple handling. And in a warehouse scenario, items that are picked often should be closest to the dispatch point. The next one is inventory. Sometimes excess inventory is considered a buffer to avoid running out, but stockpiling material when it's not necessary is wasteful. And in an office environment, it is typical to find extra boxes of photocopy paper lying at the photocopier, just in case. Or it could be excess files in an in-tray waiting to be processed. Now, in a factory, it might be raw material that has been moved to the next stage, just in case the worker runs out of material. And in a warehouse, it might be extra material that has no place to be stored, so it's stored right up on top of the racking, where it might eventually become redundant since it's out of sight. The next one is motion. And motion is within a process step, rather than from one step to the next. It's the unnecessary movement of people, equipment, or items from one place to another. It can be double or triple handling something. And in an office, it can include walking across the other side of the office to the photocopier, reaching to get materials, searching for files, sifting through paperwork, or even double entry of data. And in a factory, it could mean moving from one side of the workstation to the other to retrieve an item where it could be closer at hand. In a warehouse, it could be moving boxes from one pallet to another by walking across to the other area rather than having the pallets closer together. It can be obvious when a finished item has to be carried further than necessary. The next one is waiting. This is about not being able to undertake a step in a process since the delay is caused by either an input and output to the step or something within the step. In an office, this can include waiting for an email response or waiting for the computer to start up. In a factory, this can include waiting for materials to arrive to start your step or waiting for materials to be consumed by the next step before starting to process more. And in a warehouse, it could include waiting for a forklift to pick up a pallet off the top shelf that you need to start your task. The next one is overprocessing. Overprocessing is doing more work in your process than is necessary or more than is required. It could be related to one of all the process steps, and some think of it as over-engineering. It's doing extra work that doesn't add any value to the customer. Now, in an office environment, it could include adding more detailed report that's not required. In a factory, it could look like using a higher precision tool to do a simple task. And in a warehouse, it could be applying more stretch wrapping to a pallet than necessary. The next one is overproduction. This is about doing something or doing extra work before it's required. Some process steps are faster than others. There can be a build-up of product or work in progress. This appears when the process steps aren't balanced. It looks like we're working towards just in case rather than just in time. This leads to extra storage requirements as well. Now, in an office environment, it could be producing a report well before it's due and no one will read it, or providing a service before the customer is ready. In a factory, it's making too much product than what was planned or pushing it to the next stage, causing a jam. Now, in a warehouse, it often includes ordering more material and piling it up in the aisleway. The next one is defects. This refers to when mistakes and errors occur that need to be reworked or maybe even discarded. This occurs when the product or service doesn't meet the intended use. It can be rejected by the internal or external customer. While this waste might be easy to identify, it might be more difficult to resolve. And the last one is skills. This waste was newly added in recent years. This is the waste of human potential. This occurs when organisations separate the role of leadership from every person and assign it to those who just have the title. This is where we need to engage the people in the journey and those people who have the solution to drive out waste. So now we have a better understanding of a waste. What do we do now? I've always found that the first step is to undertake a waste hunt. Now here are 11 typical steps to undertake a waste hunt. The facilitator forms teams of 3 to 4 members. Secondly, describes a type of waste like we've just done using the 8 wastes. 3, provide them with a waste hunt sheet to record their activity. 4, allocate the area for the activity and the time to complete it. 5, have the team members go to the Gemba or the area we're identifying and identify the wastes. And as a team, record these on the waste hunt sheet. 6, after the allotted time, have the group write their findings onto sticky notes, placing them onto a flip chart. 7, then bring all the teams together and one by one have them present their findings in front of the other groups. 8, as they present each, the facilitator will ensure the waste identified is clearly explained or adjusted accordingly. 9, after all the groups have presented, the facilitator will combine the sticky notes together for the same waste. What is left is a list of wastes. 10, the entire group will then have a small number of votes to vote on the top 3 wastes that they believe are the worst. The outcome will be an agreed list of the top 3 wastes. Then the entire group determines what action must be undertaken to eliminate these wastes, and actions raised accordingly with an owner and due date, and record these actions on a flip chart. Here's an example of a waste hunt worksheet. We're using the sheet to record observations as we visit the Gemba. Now, for each team or group, we transfer these ideas onto sticky notes for posting activities on a flip chart. Another popular way to undertake a waste hunt is starting with a process flow map and walking through the process with those that are familiar or working within the process. Then determine the areas that are potential wasteful, discussing the issue that's causing the waste and possible solutions. It's valuable visiting the Gemba to take a look at these wastes. A third popular way to determine waste comes from a value stream map. The value stream map gives us a flow of the process steps at a high level, but it also gives us valuable data. A great method is to create a value stream map using sticky notes and then transferring it onto a PowerPoint slide, for example. This way you can involve the team as a team activity. As shown here, the steps are documented. There is a measurement of the cycle time and of wait time. And there's also an indication of where the wasteful steps occur. And just a side note about value to the customer, as you can see here by the lead time ladder on the bottom, there's 585 minutes of processing time, but 14 days of total lead time. Now, in the processing time, there are 3 types of the value: value add, business value add, and non-value add. We could also calculate the value added time as the proportion of the total lead time. Let's assume that all the time is value time, then the ratio is called the process cycle efficiency. The higher the number, the less waste and the more value add as proportion of our total lead time. And in analysing the value stream map by the data, we can determine tasks or steps in the process that are wasteful. And in value stream mapping, typically we highlight these by a flash symbol. This identifies that there are potential Kaizen activities to be taken place at each step. So now we've determined the possible tasks or areas of waste, we need to determine an activity to remove the waste. Like for all the methods to determine the waste, the way we action the issue can be done in a variety of ways. We can use the decision tree to determine the strategy, but typically it's divided into the size of the activity and if we know what the root cause is. If the activity is deemed to be too large, we might raise an A3 or DMAIC project. If the task is small, then we raise a Kaizen activity or a Kaizen event. Knowing the root cause makes it easy to resolve. Then we might assign actions and just complete them. If the root cause is not known, then we'll need to do root cause analysis. Then create a simple action plan, assigning the tasks to an owner and agreed due date, making it as simple or as comprehensive as necessary. And finally, in summary, Lean is about maximizing the value for the customer whilst eliminating waste. And using the 8 wastes is a good start to creating value for the customer. Thanks for your attention today.